that's come across that it passed the?
Well, yes, it passed yesterday. It's on the floor now. They're debating it as we speak. And I think a lot of people from Colorado, families live in Colorado, should be concerned about it. You know, the whole focus of SB 163 is real simple. It's starting to track our kids, which we ought to be concerned about. That means sharing our information, you know, not protecting, you know, the doctor-patient client relationship. It allows for the Colorado Department of Health to add any vaccine to its schedule. So you have a schedule now, so that's going to be expanded. And that's a serious issue based on the fact what we know about vaccines. You know, we're not anti-vaccine, we're actually pro-life. You know, we're actually pro-family, pro our children, and we have issues with those vaccines. It forces parents, you know, really, it's really interesting. So if you want to opt out in some way, you have to, you know, you have to do a reorientation, you have to do a modular, you know, you have to, what is it called, an online re-education. And think about that, you know, we're China now, you know. You know, we're the other countries that we've been fighting, you know, to talk about democracy. We're losing ours every day, right? So it's important.
Yeah, so I want to bring this up. So the reason why we're doing this segment is that we've had a number of calls, a number of emails. We had the protest that happened on Sunday.
Yes.
So there was a first reading of this bill, SB 163, on Sunday.
On Sunday.
At 10 o'clock. So
interesting.
Is that kind of a rare occasion for it to happen on
with
Sunday?
A bill like this, it should have never happened on Sunday. Or a bill like this, we should have had stakeholder meetings in the community, because everybody's now asking questions like, why are you doing this? Why are you now talking about medical exemptions? Why are you attempting to take away our religious exemptions under the cloak of, well, you know, it's not going to happen. Well, no, don't worry about it. You won't be impacted. But state after state after state after state, where you have Democratic legislators, Virginia, Chicago, Illinois, Connecticut, New Jersey. They're now, Big Pharma is in those legislative offices negotiating with those legislators to take our medical freedoms away from us, take our right to our body autonomy. They're doing all of that as we speak, and no one understands the damage that's going to be done. So we're right now fighting for our constitutional rights. We're not fighting for our medical rights. Right now we're fighting for our medical exemptions. Right now we're fighting for our life. And that's serious.
And the protest that happened on Sunday had about 2,500, 3,000 people there.
Yes, yeah.
And one of the things so I went to the protest, right?
Yes.
I wanted to see what it was all about,
right.
And I didn't even know anything about vaccines. You know, obviously my kids are grown, they're older, but I didn't know anything about vaccines. I didn't know that there was a movement to not vaccine your kids, and until about a month ago. And during this whole the COVID crisis, and the thing, I'm not going to ask you about that, so don't answer that, okay? We have people that believe a lot of things, and you're not gonna go there.
Absolutely.
We're going to talk about vaccines. And during this process of learning and reading, and you know, we got a chance to spend some time together. I walked away. It was you. Mm-hmm. You spoke, and
Bobby Kennedy spoke.
Yeah.
And, what's my other friend's name?
Theo
Wilson. Phenomenal.
Theo Wilson.
Phenomenal.
And I want to start by saying that Theo Wilson is active in the Black Lives Matter movement, right?
Yeah, he's active in his community.
One of the things that amazed me about everything that we saw out there at the protest is it was very bipartisan. I saw people that were very liberal. I saw people that were conservative. I saw people that sat somewhere in the middle. And I saw people of every race that was there. And I walked away from that protest saying to myself, okay, I'm going to go do some research about everything that they said at this protest. And if I find out it's wrong, then I'm out. Right?
Right.
But the more research I did, the more concerned that I became. Mm-hmm. And so I want to be able to ask you those questions, and I want to be able to put this in front of the 800,000 people that we reach in Colorado.
Right.
And I know we're going to do a couple of follow-up segments on this.
Yes.
And I know Bobby Kennedy is going to come in on Thursday, and we're going to have a conversation with him. But I want to ask you a couple of simple questions. I'm going to start with the first one, right? So this is a good question. You'll like this. What do the four largest vaccine big pharma organizations have in common?
Well, they're criminals.
So explain that to the audience.
They're criminals because think about it. You know, right now, the marketplace is about vaccinating our bodies and controlling our bodies. So over the last several decades, there's been enormous suits against these companies for, vaccine damaging our children, actually fraudulent behavior. I mean,
Right.
real serious fraudulent behavior. And if any of us would have ever done that, we would be in prison. We'd be locked up. So they're indemnified. We can't sue them. So they can poison us. They could do whatever they want to do. That is very uncommon.
So what do you mean they can't sue us?
Well, there's a law, I think it was in 1986, that they are indemnified. We cannot sue them. We cannot sue them for them damaging our child. We can't sue them for anything. And the federal government gave them that power. So if I have a vaccine damaged child, I can't sue. I can't sue you. I have no recourse whatsoever.
So the thing that amazed me about the people that we saw at the protest was that they weren't fighting for people who were getting vaccinated to not receive vaccines. They were fighting for this thing called choice.
Right.
Right. And so, obviously we can talk about the pharmaceutical companies and their impact, but tell me about that. Tell me what the implications are of SB 163 to the mothers and fathers.
Well,
that are
I like
out
to
there.
keep these kinds of things simple. I mean, it's really about tracking your kids. It's about sharing your information. Now, here's the thing about sharing information. Basically when you're in school, everybody knows you have your vaccine charts, you know how many vaccines you get. Mm-hmm. But now there's something more insidious in this. So it's, tracking your kids, contact tracing, which is going to be something that's going to be brutal to our privacy in this country. So now big data and big pharma are together. So now that's why this whole tracking thing is so dangerous. And that's why so many parents are concerned, because there's no privacy anymore. Everybody's going to know your business. Everybody's going to know if your kids were vaccinated or not. And that's something that already in the schools, you probably have a little bit of that going on, but this is going to be at a whole nother level. I mean, then the other thing that was very insidious about it is talking about taking away your religious exemptions.
Right.
And so this Sunday, which I was really outraged about this, you pass these bills, these mandated bills are being pushed by Big Pharma all over the country, but you don't find it important to have stakeholder meetings in our communities to talk about this, because it's a bigger issue now.
Yeah. So talk to me about that. Talk to me about the stakeholder meetings in the communities.
Normally,
how would someone go about having a stakeholder meeting?
Well, what happens is if you're in a legislative district and you have some bills, a bill like this that's really, really controversial, people really are not. They don't like it. These groups of parents all over this state are saying, we don't like that. Normally, you would go in as a legislator, you would have community meetings, you would explain what the bill is really about, is really about, and then you would build consensus, and then if the bill needs to be tinkered with, fine. If the bill needs to be tabled, fine. Never happened. But the second thing about it is, on a religious exemption side, they never even had a conversation with the religious community whatsoever. So
like any religious community?
None whatsoever. And let me just tell you how crazy it is. So on Sunday, normally, because of COVID, we haven't been having services. But this Sunday, people started to have services. So those pastors didn't know, those reverends didn't know, those imams did not know. None of us knew. So the community didn't know, the religious community didn't know, and the disenfranchised community didn't know. So now, why is that? And then why would you do it on a Sunday? This is interesting. Why would you do it on a Sunday on the heels of what's happening with COVID? Why would you do that? So you got to know.
Well, not just COVID. We have we have a seismic shift happening in our communities on how we handle violence against blacks.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So we had the Black Lives Matter protest happening. And then you had people that would have attended the Black Lives Matter protest that were attending the protest against SB 163. And you had, I happen to have the opportunity. I'm amazed at the fact that I'm 45 years old. I've never
you're young.
I've never heard of people opposing vaccines. My kids are vaccinated. I'm vaccinated. And I think about the fact that maybe I was just oblivious to it. I know that when my kids were getting vaccines, I studied them, but now we're talking about the actual outcomes of these vaccines. And tell me what you're seeing. Tell me what the correlation is.
But let me tell you how I got to this. So for a brief second, January, there was a major fight about producing a mandated vaccine bill in New Jersey.
Right.
And Assemblyman Jamel Holley. Got involved in that fight. It was a segregated bill, and I'll go into that one. I know we want to move on. It's a segregated bill. He fought that bill. There was about 10,000 parents from all over the country and New Jersey that came to that state house and said, listen, We want you to listen to us. We don't want that bill passed.
Yeah.
And it was a big deal, right? So after that, we kind of talked about vaccines. And he said, listen, you need to dig a little deeper on this. You need to go in there and see this is really a bad situation. But in the black community where he lives at, it's even worse. They knew nothing about it. They have no concept of what vaccine damage is, but every child probably in our community has been vaccine damaged in one way or another. That's pretty interesting. There's staggering numbers as we go on in this conversation about autism. I want to talk about that. But that's how I got involved. So in getting involved, I realized earlier on that in urban parts of the country, there was no discussion about this, no organized effort to empower parents to get involved in this issue. They saw it as a white woman's issue.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because I want to talk about what caused you to get involved in this issue. And this was fascinating to me. Your history is not in vaccines. Your history is in
community development, economic development, housing development, municipal finance. That's what I do. But my life's work is going to be about this. Because I realized as an institutional leader, I've ran institutions before. So I realized if we didn't have a real institutional voice, like you have Bobby Kennedy and CHD, well, our organization, our institution is going to be focused on three things. Education, advocacy, and public policy. Because what I found out was we were chasing these big pharma bills. So I'm like, look, we're going to stop doing that. We're going to organize differently. We're going to organize from that perspective, and then we're going to politically organize, because a lot of these legislators, they're not listening. They're in the pockets of big pharma and big tech, and they're ruining our lives. Right now, America is under assault. Constitutional rights, medical rights, religious freedoms, everything. We are under assault. And disadvantaged communities, they don't know how this all ties together.
So talk to me about talk to me about the disadvantaged community and the effects of vaccines. Now, I want to start by saying this, right? Before I have you answer that.
No problem, sir.
I want to start by saying this. When we start talking about vaccines or no vaccines, and this was fascinating when I heard this, who is actually harmed by the people not getting vaccines?
Well, who's harmed?
Who's the one at risk?
But this is the interesting thing. None of the kids that are non-vaccine is a threat to a kid it's vice versa. Right. The kid that has the vaccine is a threat to the kid that's not vaccinated.
Right.
But a big pharma news, they spread that out there, and people say, if you're not vaccinated, you're endangering my kid. There's a big study that just came out. I think his name is Dr. Hooker. He's a Hooker. I don't know if he's a doctor, but he just did a study about vaccinated kids and unvaccinated kids, and it's phenomenal. You should get him on the show. I'm just really diving through it. I mean, every day some new information comes out that empowers people to make the right decisions to protect their child, to protect their family, to protect their way of life.
So no one is harmed. No one that has a vaccine is harmed by someone that decides not to get a vaccine.
No, but it's interesting. But like I said, the kids that have the vaccines can harm the kids that are not vaccinated. Isn't it interesting? But if you flip it, if you look at how they flip it, they say, those kids are endangering my kids, which is absolutely ridiculous. It is not true.
So if it doesn't harm people that don't get a vaccine, then why is there a bill in Colorado to push people to have mandated?
Well, that's a business discussion,
especially on the heels of the COVID-19 vaccine
that will never solve anything, obviously. I mean, viruses change all the time. They morph into different things every cycle, right? But think about it. With all of the pandemics that you and I lived through, you're a little younger. But, we all, herd immunity took care of that. Yeah. We all had the ability to heal ourselves with the proper care, vitamin C, vitamin D, all the therapeutics that help you right now. But I want to get to that question. The reason why these mandated bills, the reason why SB 163, it's about body control. We have now become the commodity of the vaccine industry's wealth. So all of those companies that we say are criminals, they're making money off of us every day. So vaccinating your child, like $1 trillion, multi-trillion dollar industry on our bodies. So when we say we don't want the vaccines, we're a problem for them. Then they'll say, they're crazy people, they're anti-something. No, these are pretty educated, informed people. Over the years, they become that way. And they're saying, no, this is harming my child. So now, listen, imagine 5,000 people show up at your door and say, hey, look, this is poisoning my child. You know what the legislators tell them? Oh, you're wrong. Well, here's the science. Oh, you're wrong. Well, here's the data. Well, you're wrong. Because they are now in the pockets of big pharma and big tech. That's a fact. And even in this community, even in Colorado, I've gone to that state house maybe 6 or 7 times, and I have had some phenomenal conversations with legislators that are interested in listening. But the one community, and I have to say this, the one community that has not been open to this discussion on the legislative side is the Black Caucus. I am offended by that. I can't believe, because of the damages being done to our kids, you should at least give these parents and other organizations that are versed on this the opportunity to have a dialogue with you. So they haven't had that dialogue, and their kids are being harmed the most. Now that's telling. And then the other thing that frustrates me the most, I'm a Democrat, right? It is the Democrats around this country that are pushing these mandated bills. The Democrats. I mean, it's amazing.
Which I think that's the part that just amazed me, because as the more research you do, it's been a predominantly brought up, the sword's been brought up by the liberals, right? That to not get vaccinated, get vaccines. But as you go through this process, now you see conservatives on one side, and you see people that are educating themselves. Now, I did a show where I was talking to a friend, and he asked me to, we had a discussion about, he was pro-vaccine. I would say I'm anti-vaccine. I just don't know enough, but I think that people should be given a choice, right? So I'm not fully all the way to the point where I'm unhappy that I got a vaccine, but I'm also to the place where now I have pause. The more research I do, the more I go.
Isn't that interesting?
This is kind of scary.
I think that in the last 12 weeks, we got 30 million new friends.
Right.
I mean, everybody.
Because they start talking about the COVID vaccine. And they're going to give, and by the way, they're going to give you a vaccine that they've only been testing for 9 months.
Well, here's the deal.
I'm going to give you a vaccine after 9 months. But we have no idea what's going to happen to you after that.
But that goes to show you how evil it is, though.
Yeah.
That goes to show you. They don't care. They really don't care about you. They really don't care about your children. They care about their bottom line. And you have a group of people in this country like Bill Gates and his friends that are operating like God. I mean, they have now, look, we have lost 60 million jobs. I mean, never mind about the mental issues. Never mind about the brokenness of our children. Never mind the lack of hope. No hope. I mean, just because you're opening up the government or allowing us to go outside, think about that. I hire you to be my governor, and you're telling me what I can't do. And then when all of the assumptions were wrong, when we now know that everything they said was basically a lie, thank God for the great scientists in the world that's been challenging this, right? They still kept it in place. That's why you know it's evil. That's why you know what the design is. That's why SB 163 on a Sunday, on the heels of all of the things that we're going through, they come and convene their legislative body and that committee to do that.
Why is that the most important thing in Colorado we're having discussions about?
Thank you.
I mean, that really is what it comes down to. How did that get preferential treatment over a lot of the other things that we're having discussions about in our communities?
Not about jobs, not about the damage that's been done in these nursing homes, not about the facts. We're talking about an 0.1, 0.3 mortality rate, just like last year.
I told you I wasn't going to let you talk about it.
I know.
I told you. I was like, get away from that topic. Come on. We're not talking about COVID. We're talking about
it's interesting, though. But that bill ties into it in some sort of way. So
it does.
I didn't want to miss that opportunity.
No, I know. But I think that as I look at this, though, that the reason why I said, oh, my gosh, I got to slow down a little bit. I know that we had people out this week, and I said, look, obviously I'm the CEO of the company that has this.
Absolutely.
Right. And I've gotten on here twice. Right. I typically am not the one that gets up here.
So you're not. So
no.
I'm honored though.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm honored. Thank you.
But I went to our journalist team, and I went to our chief editor, and I said, hey, listen, I'm going to run a story on this. And she was like, okay. As she normally does when I say that I want to run a story on something. And what amazed me is that the more I talk to you, and the more I talk to Bobby Kennedy, and the more I talk to Theo, right, the more I feel like we as a community can at least get behind the fundamentals of why this bill may not be in the best interest of the people.
It's not necessary.
And the fact that it's coming now is it seems like it's convenient time. It doesn't seem like it's convenient for the people.
But it's all part of a national rollout for Big Pharma. Big Pharma has been doing this for some time.
Yeah.
And thank God that these parents and these organizations and these people have been pushing back. But where they find the biggest resistance is at the legislative level, at the local level. I mean, isn't that interesting? As a legislator, you should be listening to your constituents, but that's not the case anymore. I think our government has been Our government has been hijacked. I mean, way beyond what we thought many years ago, maybe 20 years ago. Big Pharma and Big Tech own our government, and we have to push back, because if not, we're all of us. They're at your door now. I want everybody out at home to know they're there. You're next. Don't think this is some white woman issue, some privilege issue. This is a human issue. This is serious.
Well, and you said something else that just shook me a little bit, and that is that they're experimenting in my community. They're experimenting on blacks. They're experimenting on poor people. And it shook me a little bit to think, look, I can do research, and maybe I should have done more research when I was
got a
going
book
through
for
it.
you called Medical Apartheid. Listen, Tuskegee, what's happening in our black communities right now, healthcare disparities, all of those things that are happening, the racial wealth gap. We talked about that yesterday.
Right,
I mean,
right.
this is serious. But think about this now. These two industries are now going to have even further control over our bodies, right? So I call it slavery by another name. Right,
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
navigate that conversation. But just think about black boys and autism, right? Over 3% nationwide, 3% nationwide, right? 75% in two of Jamel Holly's districts, which is in Union.
Right.
So 7.5% of black boys have autism. Think about that. 3% nationally, 7.5% in Union County.
Okay, so what would you say about the people that say the vaccines don't cause autism?
Well, that's ridiculous. It's been proven. Listen, remember, there was just a case recently where the Supreme Court, they never were able to bring in, CDC was never able to bring in documents that showed otherwise. The Supreme Court said, hey, wait a minute. You can no longer say that. And we've seen the damage. Look, you go into black neighborhoods, you watch these young black kids, you can see, if you pay attention, now that I'm paying attention, you can see where they're vaccine damaged. But here's the other thing, though. I call it genocide. But 10% in Newark, where I live at. That's the latest numbers now. So forget about, crime. That's the biggest crime. That's genocide. So for the next 4 generations of our community, our black men are going to be wiped out. So when people say, oh, by the way, it's a white, that is ridiculous. I see the damage every day. You see it in your schools. You see it everywhere. And one of the things why we started this institution was just not to talk about that part of it, but to be able to educate, be able to inform, be able to empower them to be able to make the right decisions when it comes to those kinds of issues. And I don't think any government should tell me what I need to do with my child. Guess what? Reproductive argument we had over the last 50 years, that's what that was about.
Yeah.
The LGBT community, that's what that was about. I could go on and on and on. So what makes this different? You know why? Because we are the commodity to their wealth.
Yeah, and that's a scary thought. I mean, just thinking about, and again, I want to be the arbiter of reality, even if and I think this is why I wanted to do this show, even the fascination that I have with vaccines or no vaccines. And I lean now towards, hey, just educate yourself, and that maybe there are some good vaccines. Now just trying to figure out what the good ones are.
Yeah, but
right?
You know what they do? If you say you don't want to vaccinate your kid,
yeah,
you become anti-something. You become the problem.
Yeah.
You become the danger.
Because you want to take away that choice.
That's right. Well, no, they want you to, that vaccine list that maybe when you were a little younger, when I was younger, I might have gotten 2 shots. I think it's about 78 now. I mean, they're giving babies HPV vaccines when they're born. That's what they're talking about. When you're in school, they're giving boys and girls HPV. I mean, that's ridiculous. For sexual transmitted disease. Are you kidding me?
Well, I mean, I think we're just not questioning it. And I think that one of the things we have to ask ourselves is, did they wake up and have a conscience all of a sudden? So we decide when we actually trust the government. It doesn't matter what side of the political aisle you are. You say, I either trust them today or I trust them tomorrow. And we make a decision that they grew a conscience when it comes to this, but they didn't when it comes to this. And we can trust them here, but we can't trust them here.
Right.
And then we start talking about pharmaceutical companies. And, you read the GlaxoSmith, $3 billion fine to resolve fraud allegations and failure to report safety data. You have Merck, which in here had to do that put a drug out called Vioxx. You remember Vioxx?
Yeah, Vioxx, yes.
They put a drug out
that
on
murdered people.
That murdered people.
Them.
Yeah, but that caused people that had a headache. I just have a headache, right? I could take an aspirin. They probably would have chosen aspirin if you'd have told them that this could result in a heart attack, and it killed people of a heart attack. Yeah. Not 100 people, but thousands,
and
tens of thousands.
And that's an ongoing narrative about the pharmaceutical industry. See, the pharmaceutical industry is not making as much money, but vaccines, that's it.
Yeah.
Imagine vaccinating billions of people around the world, millions of people in this country, and then mandating it, paying off the government. So we're in and out all day long from the time you're born to the time you're 18. Now the assault is on you and I as adults. And if we don't get the vaccinations, it's interesting. We're going to be punished. You won't be able to travel. You won't be able to do anything. Now, they'll say, oh, that's not the case. Oh, God, please, that's not going to happen. But are you kidding me? That is going to happen. Why are you tracking me in school now? Why are you creating that differential, between the vaccinated kid and the unvaccinated kid? Why all of a sudden now are you doing contact tracing, which would normally be a doctor-patient discussion?
Well, and their phone tracing.
Oh, it's embedded in our phone now.
Yeah, it's in the updated.
Yeah, it's in
iOS.
Yes,
right?
right,
Yeah.
absolutely. So now they're
it.
going to be watching you at a whole nother level. So when you hear, this is the thing that I get really frustrated about. When you hear elected officials come on the floor to talk about contact tracing or to talk about these issues, they know nothing about what they're talking about. I'll give you an example. We were at the hearing.
Yeah.
The two sponsors of this bill, it's funny. They said the reason why they advanced the bill so quickly is because they wanted to be prepared or to get more kids vaccinated because they didn't want a measles outbreak. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, they've used measles as a test case, but they said that it was eradicated. But if you walk through history, it's never been eradicated, right? And
normally when you get the measles, you get some chicken soup, you go home and you go to bed, you get up, you quarantine.
100%.
And you go, so that's the case.
And the death rate, here's the one thing that I saw, the death rate of measles was less than a 0.5%, but the death rate on the vaccine side is much greater for some of the vaccines that we have. And the more I read, the more I go, is there science to it? Is there not science to it? And I go, is there a study that shows that unvaccinated kids are either living longer or not living longer? Are they getting access to more diseases?
Well, I got to share this Hooker study that he did. I think his name is Hooker. I forget something, but it's Hooker. He just did it. It just came out. I'm going to send it to you to prepare you for the other show you're going to do.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you something. I want to have the choice to be able to say no. I have that right. They want to take that away from me. And then by taking it away from me, they want to vilify us. Then after vilifying us, they now want to trap us in our communities. They now want to tell us that, that scarlet letter on us. They're not vaccinated because the average person doesn't understand that. But all they really are focused on is giving us the vaccines to build their profits. This is profits. So every government official that's not fighting back against this, that's not looking at the real data, that's not talking to the stakeholders, that's not educating the community about the dangers of vaccines. Now, they're not anti-anything. So if you have a vaccine, do you know what's in it? No. You don't have any idea.
Do you get access to what's in it?
When you go to the doctor, they will never tell you.
They
don't tell you. But I got one better for you. Forget that part. Okay, I get that. So now I'm at the doctor's. I don't know anything about being vaccinated. So if you're pretty well off, what they inject you with, pen maybe, you get the doses, a number of doses in one. But if you're in an urban community and you go to the clinics, you get bombed. So you're getting all of that put into your body
at the same
in
time.
one split. See, one of the things I'm trying to do is simplify the narrative, so people can visualize it, because people don't think beyond 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds, right? So you got to drill down on it. So the science is there, the data is there, the reports are there, scientists understand this, but the pharmaceutical industry has paid off everyone. We don't have a government. Our government works for them. And any elected official in this country that is not pushing back against this, that's not fighting against this, that's not doing their homework, they're participating in genocide.
Whoa.
That's what they are. They're participating in genocide.
That's a big one, right?
So it's real.
Yeah.
It's real. It's absolutely real.
And Kevin, you walked away from being a developer.
Now, this is it.
But you walked away to do this. I mean,
not only did I walk away, let me tell you what has happened to me about this. When I went down the rabbit hole, I still could go do development. I still could do any of that. But just imagine the next 25 years. And what's getting ready to happen to these children? What's getting ready to be merged together, big data and big pharma, right? That is our biggest enemy. Now, how I got here was amazing. But because I grew up in a community of people that understood community development, understood how to use power, how to use government, understand how the industries can really manipulate and take advantage of communities, because I grew up in that space, I felt as though it's my moral obligation, my human obligation to come up with something in a very, very dynamic, efficient way to educate people, empower people, build advocacy. But the other thing I'm realizing is this. Elected officials don't respond to intelligence and science. They respond to fear. So the goal of our institution is do those 3 pillars, but now we have a 501c4, and guess what? We're going after them. This is war.
Yeah. That's a whole lot to swallow all at one time.
You know,
there's a convergence happening, don't you think? There's a convergence. There's a convergence on.
But this is an example of it.
Well, and I do want to deviate from this conversation a little bit and get over to the Black Lives Matters movement.
Yeah.
And I think it's important because, Theo Wilson, who's
Powerful young man.
Yeah, very powerful. If you've never heard Theo speak, we're definitely gonna have him on a show
He's phenomenal.
too. He talks from a place where, he is constantly fighting for the inner city. He's fighting for black men and women, right?
Every day.
And he
just had a newborn baby, by the way.
He did, yeah. But just a really powerful individual, but very, 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 very well versed, yes. Very educated on right. the subjects that he talks about. And he talks about the Black Lives Matter movement. If you were to show up to one of these Black Lives Matter movement, you'd see 80% white people, mm-hmm. right? The disparity is huge. Mm-hmm. So you have people that I've seen people wearing, Make America Great Again hats.
Yeah.
You see people wearing, Trump gear.
That's right.
That are actually marching in these protests. And
you don't see that. Mainstream media, Big Pharma News, they don't show you that.
No.
They want to keep us split.
And now we have all of these questions that we have as a community, and we're asking the right questions, and we have you standing up saying, hey, look, they're committing genocide.
Literally.
Right? Mm-hmm. And you have, the white moms on this side saying, hey, listen, I'm not giving my kids vaccines, and you're saying you shouldn't take vaccines. And by the way, you're trying to educate, mm-hmm. right, and advocate That's for right. mm-hmm. minority and or poor communities right. that don't have the education.
That's right.
I feel like there's a convergence. I feel like for once, since Citizens United, we won't talk about that either, that they're finally coming together and saying, all right, maybe we're now all woke.
Well, I think,
right?
not to mention the C word, COVID helped us.
Yeah.
I think that was divine, even though as evil as it was.
Yeah.
I believe always God will find a way to find truth in the middle of that. And I think that's what's happening. I think that is exactly what's happening. And I love it. And I push back against anybody discussing separation, because we have to all be in this together. Now, when I was younger, I might not have felt that way. But now that I'm older and I've raised children, I've been married, I've helped to rebuild communities, I understand how that's done. And this community of people that have been saying this for the last 15 years, they were right. They were 100% right. They were called crazy. They said that these people should be put in a box somewhere. They don't understand the vaccine issue. And if they don't get vaccinated, they're poisoning us. They became the enemy. They were right. And I have to say that. I have to tell you, I say that every place I go. Thank God for them. Thank God. And now, if I would have known what I know now, I would have been ripping up my community against the medical industry. I would have had every scientist on the planet talk to me. So I have the luxury of doing that now. And I'm doing that work. And I'm telling everyone, take a pause, take a step back, start working together. This is a bigger issue. It's all tied in. And that's what we're seeing. So in Black Lives Matter, if it's freedom fighters, if it's the Urban Global Health Alliance, if it's CHD, it's all coming together. It's all coming together, and that is my job. Educate, advocate, make sure we write the right kind of policy that will protect your medical freedoms, right? Your human rights, and your medical freedoms. That's very important. That's all under assault now. So I think what's happening is people are saying, well, dag, all these years I've been hearing about this. I've been hearing about police brutality. I understand I might have some more privilege than, white privilege. I get that. But, we got to do a better job, or this country is over.
Right.
As we know it. It is over. So that's I'm very happy about that, but I'm still concerned because they're moving at a quicker pace. So like doing this show, traveling all around the country, going in different rooms, even making them uncomfortable about this discussion. I was on the phone with Bishop Dimmer this morning, and we had an astounding conversation. He's in Colorado here, about what's getting ready to happen. And he had a meeting with the governor this morning, and he explained that they were concerned that the church community, the religious community, was not brought to the table. He was concerned about the genocide that's occurring in this process for the last 12 weeks, the C word, COVID process, right? And I mean, I was pretty happy about that. And I've been coming back to Colorado. I think this is my 6th time. And I've been having conversations with stakeholders all around the state. And I think every time I come back, there's something magical happens. And that conversation with Bishop Dimmer was magical. The conversation I'm even having with people that are opposed to what I'm saying has gotten better. I think this conversation we're having about SB 163, it's now entangled into a bigger discussion. And I don't know if it's gotten voted on, but I want everybody to know this is just not the end. This is not the end. This is just the beginning of a horror story.
Yeah, but what can the people do? I mean, and I think that's what it comes down to is, if it's a constitutional issue for you and you just want to be able to get your vaccines, but you want people to be able to choose, and the only people that are actually at risk are the people that choose not to get the vaccines. If it's a medical issue and you're just saying, listen, I don't want to share my information. I don't want my kid followed around through school. I don't want to have, I don't want to become a guinea pig and or a statistical data point for the government.
Well,
right?
when you look at what Black Lives Matter is doing, right? So Black Lives Matter, its central focus right now is on this issue, and it's a global issue of police brutality. But the issue of systemic racism and institutional racism, we have to attack that at its core. It's a virus. So and while they're doing that, and while they're working on that issue, and while we're working on this issue, for some, this great thing is happening. We're starting to conversate about it. We're starting to feel comfortable about it. But there's one theme in the middle of all of that. We don't trust our government.
I heard you say that when you were actually testifying, and I have to tell you, I said, wow.
No, you cannot trust your government.
You weren't playing.
No, because you know why? Because we're at the tipping point now. It's really,
you said, hey, you got to make a choice. I don't trust you.
Yeah, I don't trust you. None of them up there were working for us. It's politics over people. It's industry over people. It's about, and I talked about this when I was, talking outside in front of all of those warriors, those patriots, because all of them are patriots. I said, listen, the hope is that we can work together. The hope is we can find common ground. The hope is that we can believe that we're under assault. The hope is that, we can figure it out together. We might have differences of opinion. We might come into this country in different ways. Mine was slavery. They might have been running from tyranny, but we're now under tyranny is happening at a level that's unimaginable, right? And then the second part of that is love. So my wife and I was laughing. She says, Kev, where do you get? I said, we have to show some compassion because the government has no compassion for us. None. Absolutely none. We mean nothing to them. Just think about it. In the last 12 weeks, they lied. But then the other thing is action. So it gets back to what we have to do. We have to take back our government. We have to stop being so complacent. We have to turn off big pharma news. We have to start educating ourselves and retooling ourselves and refocus on the fact that if we don't take action, we're going to be wiped out. And for all of you people that think you have all this unique privilege and you probably can skirt around it, it's going to be at your door also. Because the worse it gets for us, the worse it gets for you. And you know what? And people need to understand that. So hope, love, and action is where I'm at with that. And I realize if I had any other message beyond that, I would be doing a grave damage to the movement of women and children and families that have been fighting against this. Doctors have lost their lives and their careers. Dr. Mikovits is one. Bobby Kennedy, I've developed a great relationship with his people over the last several months. They're shadow banning him. They're now censoring us. You have Google, you have Facebook, you have all of these other outlets sanctioning us, censoring us. That's China. That's not America.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I want to bring something up that was brought to my attention that has nothing to do with the vaccines, right? But it has to do with someone that, like him or not like him, he was all over the news every week. I don't remember being able to get on the news. I'm telling you, go on. I could not get on the news and actually not hear his name, and his name is Kanye West. Now, when's the last time you heard Kanye West's name?
And when you brought that up yesterday in our meeting, I was like, I haven't.
They canceled him. We have a cancel culture. They canceled him. I mean, Lamar, they did. Have you heard anything about him? Have you heard it? They've literally made it so that he is no longer relevant. They've weaponized. And look, I'm not into conspiracy. Obviously, we're in the tech space,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
but I
you
see
know,
what.
Yeah, you know how I feel about that word conspiracy, man.
It's not a conspiracy. It's actually happening. And that's why it's gonna be interesting to have a conversation with Bobby Kennedy, because obviously his uncle and his dad were both assassinated, right? And but what was interesting is that when he got up to testify and the news came out to talk to him, what do you think the question is that they asked him? I mean, they actually asked him a question about how his dad would feel about it, how his uncle would feel about it. They didn't ask him what he thought, right?
Yeah.
The guy, by the way, the team that actually went up against Monsanto and beat them. It doesn't matter if you're a conservative or you're a liberal or you're in between. It doesn't matter. He went up against a huge company for the Roundup issue.
We're all going up against one of the biggest, ugliest companies of time. I mean, all of it. Big Pharma is evil.
Yeah.
And I call it like that. I say, from a spiritual perspective, from a human perspective, from a man's perspective, a black man's perspective, when I think about, I'll give you some, black children are 6 times more likely to die of asthma than white children. Wouldn't you think that legislators in those communities, on those health committees would be addressing that? Not just having a press conference, really having a discussion about that. Come on.
Don't we think we should get to the symptoms and not the problems and not the symptoms?
Well,
and so we're actually talking about that. That's a big thing to talk about. Asthma is a real thing. I mean, it wrecks the lungs of many, 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 many people.
Black infants, right? Ready for this? Black infants are 2 times more likely to die as white infants. Now that's genocide.
And
that's genocide.
But there's no, and Kevin, I want to get to this because there's no adaptive science. There's no listening to, they're not record, because they don't record it.
Right.
You can't have a discussion about it. You can't have a discussion about, you said the study that just came out. I want to see that study.
I'm going to send that to you.
But you can't have a discussion about it because they're not admitting that the vaccines could be a cause of some of these autoimmune diseases and
that's right,
and asthma and some of the things that kids are facing and as adults that are facing, right?
Well, I'll get another one for you. I want everybody to know this. Ready?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ready for this?
Yeah.
Black mothers die at more than 3 times the rate of white women. So now, our young black boys, our future, wiped out. Our mothers wiped out. Now we're lined up like, slaves, and we're going to be the commodity to Big Pharma. And those women that have been fighting out there all their lives, fighting for their children, they were right. They're now being turned into pariah. Now that is why I'm pissed. And that's why I'm going to continue to fight for them. That's why I'm going to work for them every day. Because not only am I helping kids in my community, I'm bringing those relationships together so we could be a powerful force in this country to get people to pay attention that we are at war with the most evil industries in the world, and that is Big Pharma and Big Tech. They got us coming and going. And guess what? We have to say enough.
So I actually think we're going to have this conversation every day, not just about this issue. I mean, I think that's one of the this is the genesis of just having conversations about issues that are happening in our communities, right?
Well, yeah, I just think that as a time, I think a lot of our people have neglected the fact that the way we make changes in this world is by having conversation and sharing information. And when I see people are not willing to do that and participate in that process, I have grave concerns. I think they're anti-American. I think they're anti-human. I think they're anti-my community. I think they're anti-all of us. And to have legislators that are sitting in Washington, legislators that are sitting at the state, like basically ruining our lives, killing our children, listen, one of the things, I got to tell you the story. Let me tell you where emotionally got to me. I never heard of the term medical refugee until I got involved in this, and I'm going to get back to that. I was in Virginia with a young lady named Marsha, and I was down there lobbying, when I say lobbying, talking about a bill that was on the table, talking about mandated vaccines, about mandated bills. So I'm sitting in a sea of all of these women and their children, and I got to tell you, I saw the angst, I saw the fear, and I saw how they were holding their children, and I saw how much they loved their children. And they were there to fight against, that particular bill in Virginia, and they're still fighting every day. And I saw that, and I saw the committee door open, and not one of those elected officials stop to talk to those parents. And those parents are willing to pick up their lives, and go to states that might give them the freedom to protect their child. That is inhuman. And I was crushed. I mean, it really screwed me up a little bit. You know, I'm pretty cool about that stuff, but I was ruined about it. I called my family. I was like, we're going to be fighting this for the rest of our lives. We're going to be educating women all over this country. We're going to be educating people and talking to them about this because we are victims. And I don't like to play victim. And to have a woman get up every morning and have a husband to get up every morning to figure out where they're going to live, where they're going to work, how they're going to educate their kids, keep their kids at home. They can't play with other kids. I mean, what kind of nonsense is that? Now, what mother, what father, what community, and what faith community, which I'm quite concerned about, because they should be actively involved in this discussion. I don't know what the heck is going on with them. That's why I was so happy to have that conversation with Bishop Dimmers this morning, because it gave me hope that we can work together and that we can figure this out, and that, you know, you can go and speak truth to power. So think about that. So these are medical refugees, young women.
Yeah.
I mean, this is blowing my mind. Every time I think about it, I get choked up, because you have to see it to believe it. Like all of those women that were out there, they were there not to, you know, just come out there and scream. They were fighting for their lives.
And I met a gentleman who lost his son. I mean,
Incredible.
I mean, he actually lost his son, and I was talking to another woman whose daughter is nonverbal. And she was fine up till the age of 3, got a vaccine, literally less than a couple weeks later, was completely nonverbal, has been nonverbal ever since, for 10 years. Went from speaking and talking, and I mean, just hearing the story, I didn't know what to think, because frankly, it hasn't affected me. Both my kids are healthy, I think. But I think that was the fascinating part about looking at this, is that no matter what perspective you look at it and what community you're in, right, you have to give pause to what Pola said. Pola said that I think this strikes a balance between the rights of parents and protecting public health.
You know, I'm going to challenge public health a little bit on this one, because all you've heard from governors around the country, predominantly Democratic governors, we're going to err on the side of caution.
Bishop Demmer is watching, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, he's watching.
Listen, we got to err on the side of caution. Oh, we have to follow data and science. None of them follow data and science whatsoever. Not any one of them. And when you went to have a conversation with them and their health commissioners and say, listen, something is wrong, you're doing this the wrong way, they didn't even listen. So I got to give you another thing. I can't give you something else, because this is going to blow your mind. Oh, I found the information for you. I got this. His name is Brian Hooker. He's a principal scientist in the study of, and professor at Simpson University in Reading. He was the one that did that study. I'm going to send that study to you.
Yeah,
I
please
just want
do.
to make sure.
And we'll publish it. We'll put it up here on online.
Recent studies show that African Americans have a stronger immune response, which also increases risk to vaccine injuries. So every time you want our kids in there for those vaccines, right, look at the damage you're doing to us. Now, you would say, we all have the same
COVID.
DNA.
Sorry.
We all have the same DNA. That's not true. So now, when I say genocide, when I say medical apartheid, that's what's happening every day. So a normal young woman, black woman, they take their kid, they get vaccinated, but they don't understand the damage that's being done. And then 5 weeks later, 6 weeks later, 7 weeks later, a year later, boom, you see it. You see it. You know, you see it. So that's the thing. So Hooker, his study, I think, is going to be helpful for our global debate, our national debate, and our regional debate. And you would have actually thought for 1 second that I need some water. That these leaders would be open to having that discussion. Now, if you want to get your child vaccinated, perfectly fine.
Get your child vaccinated. That's not what you're saying at all.
If you want to wear a mask until year 2025, that's your right.
But could you get your vaccine anyway before this bill?
Huh?
Could you get a vaccine before this bill?
Yeah, you could get a vaccine before this bill. Yes.
So then why the bill?
Oh, because it's the setup. It's the setup.
I think that's what everyone's asking, is like, why? Why the bill? Why are we voting on a bill? Why are we telling the people of Colorado this is important right now?
Well, this is business, right? We know business, right? Right? It's the setup. This bill was the setup. This bill was the tracking setup. This bill was to turn these parents and these communities that don't want to vaccinate their kids because they're concerned into pariah. It is to confuse the marketplace, right? So think about it. Why? Why on a Sunday? Why this bill right on the heels of all of the horror that we've just gone through? You know what I call it? I call it human malpractice. That's what it says. Human malpractice. And who's going to pay for it? Who's going to pay for this, Joe? Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to pay for the damage that's done to my children? Who's going to pay for the damage that's done to all of our lives when we have a vaccine injured child that, that can't live a quality life that they deserve? And then you're going to turn the parents into something evil. You're going to turn their voices into something evil. And that's one of the reasons why every time I start talking about this, I get heated. Because this is not the country that I thought when I was getting older we would be at. I thought we would have transformed. So I'm still dealing with systemic racism, institutional racism. I'm still dealing with the issue of mass incarceration. I'm still dealing with all of this ugliness. Now they want to mask me, right? They want to suppress me, right? They want to put the mask of hope on me, despair on me. And I'm saying we have to fight back. So when I give you this data, right, the only thing that leads me to is orchestrated genocide. It's masterful. It's masterful what they've done in the last 12 weeks.
And I've
Genius.
heard you speak about. I had the opportunity to speak for 3 hours. We don't have 3 hours. We got probably another 15 minutes.
Okay, man.
But I've heard you speak masterfully about being educated about knowing what's really happening out there, right?
Yeah.
And it drew me to the conclusion that we had to at least speak about it. We had to give people the opportunity to hear.
Right.
What they're not being taught, where they're not, it almost feels like a shield.
Well, it is.
Right? Because in my life, I haven't heard any of it.
Yeah.
I haven't heard any of it.
Well, I've heard, look, I'm a black American, so I've seen all of the horrors in all of those spaces.
Right.
I've seen it up close and personal. I know it, I feel it, I smell it. So when I see an injustice, when I see something happening, I don't care what color you are. It has impact on me because I live it. Now, I might have a little bit more privilege than the other guy, right? So what does that matter? But as a group and as a nation, and as a community, and as where you sit, we're losing. So it's just not about you and I just being separate, living our good lives, being able to do what we love to do. As a group, as a nation, we're losing. So I just laid out a pathway that outlines genocide for black kids. I've outlined in this discussion about the impact of vaccines. If you want to take the vaccines, that's fine. But what they're doing now, they're going to trap you, where if you don't take them, if you do not take them, your life will be over as you know it. And that's what I call slavery by another name, technological slavery, pharmaceutical slavery. And guess what? And I was very proud to know in the last several months that coming back in here and traveling, there's a different kind of feel about it. I'm feeling a little hopeful. People are starting to pay attention.
Yeah.
I'm jogging in the park. Kevin, we're not taking those vaccines. Now, they don't even know.
Yeah.
I'm in the supermarket.
You're pretty well known.
I'm in the supermarket. Kev, we're not taking those vaccines. Now, you're going to find something very interesting. You know who says that to me all the time? Men. And I told my friend, I said, guys are saying, hey, Kev, I'm not giving my kid that stuff. Now, think about it. I have 2 grandsons. So I feel very guilty about the fact that I did not know about this. So, I look at my younger grandson, I'm concerned. I look at my older grandson, I hope he survives. And I'm looking at my daughter's future for their children, and I'm like, I'm really to the point that I'm suggesting moving forward that they don't have any more children, because I don't know what's on the other side. So I have to fight every day. So when people talk about Martin Luther King, when people talk about all of the great people in our lives that have transcended to bring us together to fight against the injustices in this country, everybody's forgotten about that.
Yeah.
How we unified to push back on evil, how we push back on white supremacy, we push back on it. So when I see these kids out there in Black Lives Matter and everybody coming together, that's God acting. That's God right there. That's God fighting evil right there. And I think that's the thing that I hope to motivate me for the rest of my life to do this. Hey, listen, I can go out and make money just like everybody else. I love money, but I love my people more.
Well, I have to tell you, you brought a different light to me. You brought a different light to definitely the 3,000 or so people that showed up to protest. And what was interesting is that I felt, this is just a question, and I'm just going to ask you just one word: why? Like, why is Polis taking this up? Why are people that are elected that are elected to represent their communities? Why are they?
They don't work for us anymore.
I think
they don't work for us.
I think
anymore.
that really is what it comes down to.
As a matter of fact, I think they literally, because they'll always say, very political correct, well, they're nice people. Oh, no, you're not nice when you do this. There is no reason for you to do this. There's no reason. I live in America.
But the bill wasn't written by one of the sponsors, was it? It was probably written by someone else.
Well, the lobbyists, if you know the business of public policy,
I do. Yeah.
A lot of them are written by lobbyists. A lot of them are written by industry, and and that's a whole nother discussion for another day.
So people need to know who's the bill. The bill was written by a lobbyist,
right?
It wasn't written by someone that represents a community that says, "I'm going to sponsor this bill." It was written by a lobbyist.
And it's very strategic.
So who do the lobbyists work for? And by the way, why did they actually have to tell the people in the community that this lobbyist for this organization wrote this bill? Why is it not disclosed? Wouldn't we make better decisions as a community if we knew that a bill was written by Plaxis or Merck, right?
Right. But that's the system now. And we talked about that yesterday. That's the system now. Our government is not working for us anymore. And we have to just admit that. Because if we don't really deal with that, the denial, because some people always say, well, it's working for me a little bit until something happens. It's not working for you at all. It's not working for you at all. And majority, now this is really interesting. There's some really dynamic legislators out there in this country, but they literally stand alone.
Right.
But majority of them.
On both sides of the aisle.
Both sides of the aisle. Majority of them. Whatever they told you when they got elected, that went out the window. But the problem is we should stop reacting. We should create an action strategy every time one of them steps out of line that puts our lives in danger, puts our children's lives in danger, puts our communities at danger, robs us of our resources. They have to go. There is no logical conclusion to that, but they have to go. There's no rebranding them. There's no retooling them. Right? There's no trying to get them to align with us consciously or spiritually. They have to go. And what we've done to ourselves is we've been snookered by the political process in this country. I mean, think about it. Governor that I put in office is now telling me to shelter in place when science has told me that's going to cause more damage.
I told you weren't allowed to go here.
I know, man. I know. But
I was like, please don't go here.
Yeah.
Please, please, please. Well, people yell at us.
I love you. No, but think about that. We form the government, we finance the government, and we're acting like children. They're the daddies, we're the children. That is crazy.
And we don't need a daddy.
We don't need a daddy.
We don't need a daddy. We're gonna have to wrap up here, but I do wanna thank you. And Kevin, if you want to just take the next minute and just tell people a message. First of all, how can they find more information?
Well, this is the thing that I want to talk to Colorado about today. Outside of hope, love, and action. I think that should be our process moving forward, how we come together. Presently, right now, in the next 7 months, probably sooner, this bill here is going to be the gate, opens the gate for all the things we talked about, contact tracing, mandatory vaccines, losing your medical freedoms, losing your religious exemption, losing your constitutional rights, losing control over your body, right? This is going to happen like a speeding bullet. Right? And I need all of Colorado, all of America, all of New Jersey, all of Virginia, all of Chicago, everybody to understand that we're at war. We're at war with big tech and we're at war with big data. I don't care where you go to church. I don't care where you play baseball. I don't care where you go to school. I don't care where you dance. I'm telling everyone in this country, they are coming for you. And you asked this question about who wrote this particular bill. And I got a great team of brilliant people out there that make me look a little decent, right? And guess what? GlaxoSmithKline wrote that bill.
Are you serious?
That's right.
So GlaxoSmithKline wrote that bill?
Absolutely.
So you're telling me that a pharmaceutical company wrote a bill that got pushed through our state house on a Sunday.
On a Sunday.
That Governor Polis said, I support this bill because it strikes a balance between public health, right?
Yeah.
And parents' rights, even though it strips them parents of their rights, right? It makes it more difficult for them to not vaccinate their kids. And you're telling me that a pharmaceutical company wrote that bill?
Absolutely.
And 100% a pharmaceutical company wrote that bill?
Absolutely.
So we have a pharmaceutical company, folks, that wrote a bill that we're putting through our House that a group is actually supporting. I just want to know one thing. How can we trace the money back to those donations that are made?
We have a team of people that do that, and we can show patterns all around the country.
Because we're tired of corruption. I don't think there's a person in Colorado that's not just effing tired of the corruption, not at every level. Like we want to hold and they get on TV and they say nice things and they say we're here for public safety to protect you, right? And then the people that get pissed off are like, well, I don't need protecting. I don't need a daddy. I don't need a mommy, right?
They have single-handedly destroyed my faith in this government. I grew up in the government space. I've worked with government, pretty much, and I worked with a great classy group of people across this country that really was committed to not being corrupt, doing the right thing, building community, platforming opportunity for people. And when I look 50 years of my life, my span of my life, I'm 57 years old, and if I drive through some of these communities, rural communities too. So you got to understand, rural communities, small communities, they're devastated. So this grand design to link us all together and bring prosperity didn't happen. Yeah. We're all worse off. We're worse off. So my faith community, I'm saying, get active. Find your moral voice, right? Find that hope, love, and action. I mean that. We need the religious community to say enough. Let's stop propping up these guys. Let's stop propping them up. Don't come to my church during election day when you voted for that bill. Don't come in my church talking about health when we know that these black kids are dying every day. Don't come in my church or my mosque or my temple talking about, well, we need to work together when we know the vaccines are killing our children. Science, data, facts. So don't come in my church. Why do we do that? And then community leaders all around this country, we have to adjust our mind.
And come together. Yeah, come together regardless of your political affiliation. I think at some point we have to come together as people in our community.
Well, you're absolutely right. So, right? I think that the faith community has the most important role to help us to cleanse this a little bit, to get us. And then the other groups, the other people out there, like those parents, I call them freedom fighters and patriots that have been fighting, we need to give them support. We need to stand behind them. I don't care where you live. We need to do that because they were right. We did not pay attention. They said this was next. They told us what's going to come next after this. And you have so much science out there, so much good data, so many good thinking people. But the one thing I noticed is that with all of these people that are talking about public health, I haven't seen anything from them. They fall back public health. But I think what we should do too, we should take legal action for this. Those health commissioners, those governors, those legislators that signed on to this horror, right, that didn't change when they got different information, that have destroyed our world as we know it. He's going into I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, go ahead.
We need to make them pay.
Yeah.
They have to pay. You can't intellectualize yourself out of this. Because that's what happens. A lot of intellectual dishonesty.
Well, I think that we're gonna end on that note because I think we could probably beat that to death, right? I think you and I would agree, right? But I do think that there are people that fear has gripped them, and for good reason, right? The media is telling them a lot. If you would have told me that Glaxo actually wrote that bill, if they would have said it in the hearing, if they would have said, "Hey, Glaxo wrote this bill,"
I got a name. Sundry Kraft, president of Ascent Strategies LLC. Kraft Public Affairs. I'm going to send that to you.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
And she wrote it.
Listen, let me just tell you another thing.
And the bad part is that you've been right up to this point, so I'm afraid for you to be wrong, but I don't think you are wrong.
No, those parents and the people that do this freaking work every day, they're right. And I got to tell you something. It warms my heart that, and I like Colorado. I like the people here. Really good people. And, I'm just happy that I had the opportunity to talk to you as long as I did yesterday, because I can go on. But it was very important that how we connected. And I appreciate you opening up this platform for not me, but for all of those children and for all of those parents and for all of those disenfranchised people, and that's important for me. And I'm going to go everywhere on this planet to have this conversation. And I'm going to push back. You can't out-politicize me in those. I get it. Don't come with the crap.
I don't want to out-politicize you. But we are going to have. So I want to tell people this. Look, listen. We share this video if you're pro-vaccine. Share this video if you're anti-vaccine. Share this video just to share this video. Looks really good on our stats. So we look good when you share us. But more importantly, ask yourself the important questions. We're all in this community together. It's been a tough 12 weeks for a lot of people. A lot of people were unemployed, but making it tougher, we stack on some of the things that have happened with with some of the protests and the riots and just the effects that it's had on our community. So we're going to sign off, but Kevin, I want to thank you for coming in.
Hey, listen. I want to say one thing.
Yeah.
UrbanGlobalHealthAlliance.com.
Yeah.
You want to get some information? Stop there. If you want other information, you stop there. We can get you dialed into other spaces, okay? Because we're about doing the work, and I'm so happy to have been working with all of these other groups like CHD. I mean, it's an incredible team of people. I mean, they do the work. Listen, I literally talk for a living, but I talk 24 hours a day with those communities around this country about this issue. I'm committed to it. I've given my life to it. It's my new vocation. Because really, if without us fighting, we have no future. That's my message for today.
Again, thank you for coming in. Hey, Denver Now and all the OCN communities, I just want to thank you all for listening in. We're going to make this more of a podcast that we do every day. And we're going to talk about this issue and other issues. You're welcome to send us an instant message and tell us what you'd like to talk about. If there's something that comes up in your community, you want to talk about it. If there's some legislation you want to talk about. But we want to give you an opportunity to have your voice heard. So thank you all for joining us. This is Our Community Now, Joe Oltmann, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.